world.
That is why I call on all citizens to ensure that the election is credible, transparent and peaceful.
East Timor readies for new presidential elections, while framework for Libya's new government begins to take shape.
The law provides for a mixed parallel electoral system with 120 seats to be elected by majoritarian races reserved for individual candidates and 80 seats to be elected by proportional race reserved for lists to be submitted by political or other groups.
This is The World with Tim Stackpool.
Thanks for joining us once again. We'll also take a look at women in remote communities and the ongoing struggle against gender inequality. But first, in the next few weeks, the citizens of East Timor will vote for a new president. This is one of two elections taking place this year in the Asian country, which also celebrates 10 years of independence in May. Diane Penn reports.
On behalf of the United Nations, I wish the people of Timor-Leste all the best for the election.
UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon in a special message ahead of the March 17th presidential elections in Timor-Leste. Mr. Ban calls the vote a milestone in the country's consolidation of democracy.
But stability and democracy can never be taken for granted. They must be nurtured and protected. That is why I call on all citizens to ensure that the election is credible, transparent and peaceful.
Timor-Leste will also hold parliamentary elections in late June. But before that, 13 candidates will vie for the presidency, including the incumbent José Ramos Horta.
The political situation in Timor-Leste in recent years has been remarkably free of tension. Ours is an open society. Transparency of our public life is a process that we set upon ourselves to promote and to deepen with the assistance of the international community.
A former Portuguese colony, Timor-Leste was annexed by Indonesia in 1975. The United Nations has had a presence there since 1999, shepherding the country to independence 3 years later. The current UN peacekeeping mission in Timor-Leste, known as UNMIT, is headed by Amira Haq. She explains the UN's involvement in the elections.
One is technical assistance to the electoral management bodies. I must emphasize that it is the national election management bodies who are managing the elections, and the United Nations role is increasingly smaller. We will also assist the national police in providing the security and environment within which the elections can be conducted. Thirdly, we will provide assistance in logistics. My colleagues tell me that during the last election, there were unforeseen rain and it was very difficult to get to some of the areas where the ballot boxes had to be collected, and that the UN mobilized everything from its own air resources to getting donkeys to bring the ballot boxes from some of the remote areas.
The UN peacekeeping mission in Timor-Leste will wind down its work this December. Ms. Haq expressed pride in the UN's role in accompanying the Timorese people on the road to becoming a resilient nation.
Diane Penn reporting. Still in the region, and tribal wars are forcing families in the highlands of Papua New Guinea out of their homes. Not only are these families being separated in the conflicts, but women and girls are being exposed to violence. Voice for Change, a non-governmental organisation, is trying to create a safe environment for these displaced women through mediation. It is also helping to empower rural women and advance their rights. Lily Dessau-Coltz is the founder, and this year she successfully coordinated a peace reconciliation to resettle 500 internally displaced families. She's speaking with Jocelyn Sambira.
I'm a victim of a tribal war awarded took place in my husband's tribe, and that has lasted for more than 17 years, and that has displaced a lot of our tribal people, and I'm also a victim. I am resettling in another community, and my experiences as a woman and as a woman from internally displaced from such tribal war has led me to set up a network with other like-minded women to support other women who are facing similar problems.
What are some of the challenges you encountered?
The challenge is so huge as a woman human rights defender, in a society where women are not they're lowly valued is a challenge in itself. It's a sacrifice. Sometimes I get threats and try to stop from doing my work, but I think it's the passion and the experiences, and I realize that a lot of women are faced with this, and we have also other women who come together and try to support each other and the women who are facing similar problems.
There's a big meeting taking place here in New York looking at the status of women. The focus is empowering rural women to fight poverty and to fight hunger. Do you think it's possible?
Yes, I think the women are there ready. The rural women, they can do anything to support and keep the family together, and they are the potential resources. And I think the women, if she's given the opportunity if she's given the opportunity to access information, if she's given the access to finance and to skills and knowledge that she requires, and if she is linked to a market, a good market, and if she is provided a social security, I think that woman will be able to develop if she's given this opportunity.
What about the men in your country? How do they feel about, the focus being on women and being on women as breadwinners?
Men, they know that women are playing a major role in the household, in the communities, because the community activities like the church gathering, the funeral, the other ceremonies such as the bride price and all this, the women are there to make things happen. They are behind the scene, making sure that things are happening. It's just that the men are not coming out to acknowledge and give them the space.
What do you do within your organization, Voices of Change, to get men on board, to convince them?
It's very different from the society where I come from, where men do not give enough space or opportunity to women. Women are regarded lowly, so we try to take the men on board along with us, because in our society, you have to get through a woman, through a man. So we know the importance of not what the men do to the family, but of the status and all that. It's in the community, and it's how the society views as men is still the head of the family, men has to take part, men has to be given the opportunity, the first choice. So what we do is that we see the importance of involving the men, taking the men along with us, and try to do as much as we can to involve the young men, their husbands, as well as in our training, and also let them know and appreciate the role the women play.
To Africa now, and Ghana is facing the challenge of combating poverty amongst its rural women who do the bulk of agricultural work. The West African country is also grappling with the migration of people from the north, which is underdeveloped, to the south, in search of opportunities for better life. Derek Mbata sat down with Julia Azamar-Mensah, Ghana's Minister for Women and Children's Affairs, to discuss the situation.
Our rural women work very hard. As we speak, they are there in the hot sun, on the farms, in the markets, with their children in their bags. And so we feel that extreme poverty, for us to eradicate it, we have to specifically target our rural women to make sure we make their lives a lot better.
How is their economic situation right now?
For rural women, we cannot say they are the best in terms of having a good economy. They work hard, and yet they get less. They are the ones engaged in almost 70% of the food crop production, which means they are the people who give us the food basket, the food security of the nation. And yet they themselves, maybe because first and foremost, lack of education, for you to have the appropriate technology, the skills, the marketing skills, the ICT skills, that is what makes them not actually reap the maximum effects of the hard work they do.
Is poverty still a serious problem for rural women in Ghana?
Absolutely. we can easily say that almost about 18% of our rural women are in abject poverty.
Are there programs that are tailored for rural women to improve their economic load in Ghana?
Absolutely. I can give you a few examples. We have the Ghana Environmental Management Project, and this is a kind of a strategic project that deals with drought. Now, in the north of Ghana, the climate is more drought-stricken. So the country is dealing with those areas whereby women have to learn new technologies in terms of making their farming easier for them. And of course, once these technologies are applied, of course, they get more income. Then we have another project that is done by my Ministry of Women and Children, whereby we take girls from rural poor households. These girls maybe fall by the wayside, and they may be due to lack of money. They are not able to go ahead to go into secondary school or to the tertiary school. So we pick these girls from the poor homes and give them skills in areas which hitherto are seen as male-dominated jobs.
Like?
Electrician. We give them skills in masonry to become builders. We give them skills in car spraying or dealing with car work, and gradually we find that this will give them a decent job. It will change the course of life, and of course these girls will go back into their rural setting. We have this specific one which the government is putting in a lot of resources called the Savannah Accelerated Development Authority Program.
What does it do?
We see that a lot of young people migrate from the north, which is classified as poor and poorly educated and all that. So you have these young people migrating down to the south looking for non-existent jobs. They expose themselves to a lot of vices. So this is seen as a very big challenge, and then it means that this program will, whatever is down in the south, that these young people are coming down for, will be replicated in the north.
So we have project to develop the north.
Develop the north so that they don't have to come down and expose themselves to any other risky kind of lifestyle. And so we are hoping that about 1.56 million of women and young girls will benefit from training, a lot of programs, agricultural and other activities that will reduce this trend of going down.
Do you see a brighter future for rural women in Ghana?
Absolutely. But first and foremost, we are now stressing the fact that every girl must be educated. From then, you are able to use your education to acquire a lot of knowledge and skills, especially in ICT, in marketing skills, because whatever you're doing in the rural setup, you must be able to market and network with other people so that you also can easily say that, yes, you are part of the global development.
This is The World with Tim Stackpool.
Around the world, men are being mobilized to stand up against gender inequality. From taxi drivers in Kenya to student activists in India to refugees in Uganda. They've all pledged to control gender inequality in their communities. They're part of a pilot project known as the Mobilising Male Initiative, which is led by the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. Diane Penn is speaking to Layla Sharafi, a technical specialist on gender issues.
There is a recognition now within the last 15 years in the development community that any genuine effort to address gender inequality will imply working with both men and women in order to get to the root causes of an issue such as gender inequality.
Now, you spoke about 3 countries where the program is in place. Are there any similarities in terms of why they need this program?
We know globally from statistics that gender-based violence is prevalent everywhere. There is no community that is untouched by this issue. I mean, there are certainly similarities in the sense that when men were mobilized to volunteer essentially for this initiative, there was a very good response in terms of a lot of men speaking up and saying, actually, this is something that I strongly believe in. And standing up to gender inequality in a patriarchal system is sometimes a challenging thing.
And can you tell us, how were men engaged? I mean, who were the men that participated?
So the range was quite diverse, actually. We worked with local decision makers in India. We also worked with men within the transportation sector in Kenya, for example, the boda boda drivers, which are essentially the motorcycle drivers that transport different people around the community. And we also worked with university students in India. And as well as within the community in Uganda, we worked with different young men who were working within a refugee community.
And tell us, what has been the outcome?
There's been several different results. Different types of policies have been passed in certain institutions. For example, in Kenya, a code of conduct was developed and ratified for the boda boda driver community. In India as well, for example, college campuses and villages now have a greater constituency of men who are committed to working for gender equality and, of course, end sexual and gender-based violence. In Uganda, which is the third country where the project was implemented, Mobilizing Men activists have helped bridge the gap, for example, between the gender-based violence service providers and people living within the refugee communities.
Diane Penn with that story.
This is The World with Tim Stackpool.
Ending the use of rape and other forms of sexual violence as a weapon of war is still one of the greatest challenges to the protection of human rights, and that's according to the UN's Margaret Wallström. She says one useful tool in fighting impunity is the list of named and shamed for crimes of conflict-related sexual violence. For the first time, it has been included in the UN Secretary-General's annual report out this week, and Wallström says the vision is to create conditions in which armed groups see sexual violence as a liability that will invite national and international scrutiny and censure. Julie Walker has the story.
Well, in this report, we are also looking at, I shouldn't call it new phenomena, but the fact that this is being used, rape and sexual violence is being used in the political context and also in political strife and civil unrest as we've seen. And we are warning against this, and we have to do more to prevent this. We have seen it in West Africa, we've seen it in other places, and I think the Security Council also has to keep an eye on this. So we are also moving at the same time as we make fighting impunity a priority. We also have to make sure that everything we do is to make prevention, to prevent this kind of crimes. So these are also, I would say, elements of the report that are very important.
If you had to give me a few sentences on the most important thing to come out of this report, what would it be?
This is the first time that we have a report containing a list of the most wanted for these kind of crimes. That means we are doing everything we can to fight impunity and to go after the perpetrators. And this time they are listed in an annex for conflict-related sexual violence crimes.
That is part of the new tactic of naming and shaming. Am I right?
Yeah, this is not a new tactic because it has been used before against perpetrators of violence against children. But this time we also address sexual violence committed against adults, both men and women and children. And it is important for us to be able to show the world that these are among the perpetrators, and also that the Security Council keeps this on top of their agenda and that they commits to using all the tools they have available to them, including sanctions against perpetrators of sexual violence.
There seems to still be quite a bit of impunity. Why is that?
Because I think this has been historically seen as collateral damage or inevitable in any situation of war and conflict. Or that it is a lesser crime, that it is not as serious as other human rights violations. And this we have to change. And I think we are well underway with the Security Council staying committed to these issues and keeping it in their discussions. And we want to be relevant to the debate in the Security Council.
Is there something that you think needs to be done that is not being done to tackle this issue better?
Well, we still have to improve on the services to survivors of sexual violence, including men. We, of course, have to make sure that there is a political accountability and ownership of this issue everywhere. And we need to make sure that also the media continues to report on it, that it is not, again, directed towards oblivion or that these victims are being silenced, but that they can speak up and that they can get the assistance they need.
We often think about women being the victims, but as we know and as you just mentioned, sexual violence, especially rape, is used as a weapon of war against men as well. Talk a little bit about that, please.
We are learning more about that because I think only now have we seen that men dare to come forward to tell their stories as well. And it means that all of the UN agencies and entities, they also have to issue guidance on how to address this problem and how to meet the needs of these victims and design their services also to male victims. And as for women, there is a great deal of stigma and shame around this, and they need to be encouraged to come forward with the stories. And, for example, medical assistance has to be also adapted to their needs. As we heard, stories of men being sent to the gynecologist and to that department in hospital, and of course that doesn't help.
Julie Walker with that report. To Libya now, where the people are eager to move forward with the transition to democracy. Ian Martin is the head of the UN support mission in the country, and he briefed the Security Council this week by teleconference on Wednesday, more than a week after Libyans marked the first anniversary of the beginning of their revolution. Derek Mbata has more.
Ian Martin told the Security Council that the people of Libya took to the streets on the 17th of February to mark the anniversary of the start of their revolution peacefully. He said the government, which has been in office for only 3 months, is preparing for the elections and has adopted an electoral law. Libyans are expected to vote for members of a body that will draft a constitution for the country.
The law provides for a mixed parallel electoral system with 120 seats to be elected by majoritarian races reserved for individual candidates and 80 seats to be elected by proportional race reserved for lists to be submitted by political or other groups. Like all electoral frameworks, this parallel system is a compromise among competing views and interests, but our judgment is that the law provides a reasonable foundation for the election of the National Congress, although some gaps and shortcomings remain.
Mr. Martin welcomed the fact that the law includes what he described as a modest formula to ensure participation of women. The election of a local council in Misrata on the 20th of February, he added, has demonstrated the determination of communities to establish the legitimacy of local representation.
Approximately 65% of the eligible population registered and 57% of registered voters cast their votes for 28 seats. The candidates elected were announced following a 2-day counting period in a peaceful and amicable environment. The police and brigades provided comprehensive security within the city and outside of the 78 polling stations.
The successful conduct of the elections nationwide will depend on the improvement of the security situation in the country, said the UN envoy.
The Libyan authorities well recognize that their foremost challenge is to address the future of the revolutionary fighters and the wide circulation of weapons, and to develop professional state security institutions under civilian control. However, while the diverse armed brigades continue to lack clear lines of command and coordination, there is some appreciable progress in the development of state authority over brigades in the provision of security, including through the establishment of local security committees under the direction of the Ministry of Interior to coordinate security operations among participating brigades.
Mr. Martin disclosed that some of the tremendous challenges the new government in Libya is facing include the tackling of illegal migration and smuggling, effective border control, and proliferation of weapons. In addition, there is the need to reverse policies of discrimination against minority communities and to foster national reconciliation among ethnic groups. Derek Mbata, United Nations.
And finally, still with the UN, where the UK plans to shine a spotlight on several key issues during March, when it will hold the revolving presidency of the Security Council. British Ambassador to the UN, Sir Mark Lyle Grant, says the UK will hold 3 formal events in the Security Council during the month. One will be a ministerial-level meeting on change in the Middle East. The other 2 special events will focus on Somalia, as well as the conflict that still exists between Sudan and South Sudan.
We're planning 3 formal events, which will be the centerpieces of our presidency. The biggest is on the 12th of March, when we have a ministerial level meeting of the Security Council, focusing on change in the Middle East, challenges and opportunities. And we've invited a number of Arab ministers to come and participate in that meeting. And some other ministers of the Security Council members will also be coming to that. And then in the afternoon, a session with NGOs and civil society around a theme of from activism to accountability, to explore in a little bit more detail some of the issues around peaceful protest and moving from protest into government. Secondly, on the 5th of March, we have an event on Somalia, where we're looking to adopt a presidential statement which will endorse the outcome of the recent London conference on Somalia, to give international community blessing for the outcome of that conference. And thirdly, we'll be looking to do an event on Sudan. In the Council this week, President Mbeki and the AU high-level panel have been briefing the Council on their efforts to resolve some of the outstanding problems between Sudan and South Sudan, and we'll be looking to take that forward in the month of March. Certainly I would expect Syria to be discussed in the Council on a number of different occasions. And in addition, there is the possibility of returning to the Security Council with a draft resolution to see whether it's possible to have a resolution which is not vetoed by Russia and China, as the last 2 resolutions were.
And that is The World for this week. If you want to learn more about the program or wish to make a contribution to the show, then please do visit us at www.theworldradioshow.com. From there, you can subscribe to the podcast and also access our Facebook page to join the discussion on any of the topics raised in the program. The World is committed to bringing you stories that affect the people of our planet, either on a mass or individual scale, and we hope to do so with balance and integrity. The program is produced and compiled by Tim Stackpool, and I look forward to your company next time. Until then, bye for now.